So I work as a nutritional therapist, and I don't produce any food, but I work with health in other ways. So I just thought it was, normally when I'm asked to do a talk, it's more like how does gluten affect your gut and how does that affect your neuroinflammation or something. It's very specific and it's more detailed, so I thought this was a bit of a challenge like that. So I asked Andrea a lot of questions. So basically, how she kind of gave me like 7 questions to answer. So she wanted to kind of know what my worldly vision is, like how I work as a nutritional therapist. And do you all know what a nutritional therapist do? Okay, so in clinic, if someone is not feeling well, like say you have a chronic problem, chronic health symptoms or autoimmune disease when the body attacks itself, it's very hard for the conventional healthcare system to deal with that because they often have a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, and I try and do it like look at health from a much broader perspective, and you look at what people eat, how they live basically, do they have what genetics they have, how that genetics, how your genes interacts with the environment in your body, how your gut flora is, do you have infections. So you take it from a bigger approach, kind of what not a sustainable, like a very a holistic way of kind of dealing with illness. So you kind of go to the root cause of a problem instead of just trying to calm down the symptoms with the medicine, basically. So I think for a lot of nutritionists, we are trying to see how preventative kind of medicine can be a bigger part of the world. And I try and always talk to my clients how you can have like a personal responsibility to get well here and now, but then also to make choices so that we can better our world in general. I feel a great need to educate and inspire. I do quite a lot of training, and then I feel it's a responsibility to kind of spread that further. What motivates me to work what I do, and I very much, I'm kind of very driven about trying to kind of better the world as a whole, not just with each individual, but that you look at the kind of the planet as a whole, the oceans, forests, animal, and people. I'm very passionate about plastics in the sea, for instance. And then I try and teach my clients how we can live better, but also then make choices to kind of not just think about ourselves here and now. But then I do also get, this is my husband, he says I do it for the wrong reason, but I do get a huge kick out of kind of beating the big pharma when I get very complex cases. And for some people they've been kind of doctor hopping, and then they might have had a problem for 10 or 20 years, and then if they come to me, most people get well, not everyone, but a lot of people get really good results, and then I get a kick out of that, basically. So I started working with health about 16, 17 years ago. I'm a very passionate person. I need to do something that I really love. I can't just sit in an office. I can't have any anxiety on Sundays to kind of start working on a Monday. I need to do something that I have a real interest. So I had a heart-to-heart with myself, and then I narrowed it down to nutrition. Not everyone wants to have needles stuck in them or takes pills, but everyone wants to or needs to eat, and we all have an opinion about what is good for me, or so our reference points about how we eat, and so basically that's something that we have in common. Even if we eat different in different ways, so we all have to eat, and so I chose nutrition, and I graduated 2005 from a university in London. I lived in London for 18 years and I've been in Sweden for 5. And from then on, I've just continued doing like loads of just continued professional development and going on courses and so on. And I jumped on board with the Institute for Functional Medicine. Functional medicine is something which is growing a lot in Sweden, where again, you know, there's a movement of how we can deal with not just like what Andrea says about how we can look at farming and so on from a more of a kind of responsible way of farming. This is also something that we apply in healthcare. The current healthcare system is not really working as it is right now. So we have to take more responsibility for our own health. And so functional medicine is kind of like as a result of that, basically. So going to the root cause of the problem. So what I currently do is I then work as a nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner in a clinic. I have clinic 2 days a week where I see clients back to back, and I think for me that is more efficient. And during the consultations, you basically go through a very extensive questionnaire, and you do medical history from birth to their current age, and you map everything out of how, you know, when certain illnesses started to happen or symptoms, and then you start to, you kind of get to see what is the chicken or the egg, or you start seeing patterns of where you have to prioritize to kind of manage a person's health. So I do that 2 days a week, and then my partner here is Jackie. We have set up a couple of years ago Nordic Wellth, and that's like a digital wellness community, a platform that we're developing, and it's going to be for doctors and nutritionists alike, and we are going to provide tools to manage illness and also to stay healthy. But we haven't officially launched. We are still kind of testing it out, basically. But it's going to be hopefully launched within a year. So there are certain, I think, this challenges and dilemmas. I try to look at that also from like more of a food point of view. There are so many challenges with the healthcare system, you know, as it is right now. From a health point of view, I mean, I've treated thousands of people, and most people thrive on a paleo diet or an autoimmune paleo diet. Maybe because I see people on the spectrum where they're already quite sick. So a paleo diet is basically a diet that's tried to mimic on like how we have evolved as humans over millions of years, and what we have naturally had in our diets, and how our genetics have evolved. So it's basically eating lots of vegetables, like a lot of vegetables, animal protein and fats. That's mainly like what the paleo diet is. And then the autoimmune paleo diet is like a step harder to that. If you have autoimmune disease, basically you have to actually manage something. From an ethical point of view, maybe that's wrong. Maybe we can't do that. Maybe we should eat a lot more plant-based. Only plant-based, I don't know. We definitely need to eat less animal protein. I think a lot of people, they eat way too much protein and the wrong quality of protein. They don't really think about how the animals have been raised or transported. So that's something that I talk to my clients about. Health and kind of sustainability for the planet doesn't always match. It's like oil and water, and that's can be tough, because if you are sick, you need to, let's say I get someone who is ill and they're a vegan, and I point out you have to take away lectins, which is basically all beans and lentils, most seeds. You have to start eating animal protein. You know, everything starts spinning in their head. But if that's what kind of causes you to be sick, then that doesn't obviously match. So that's a challenge from like to kind of get sometimes people to eat something that they need to eat just to get well, and then maybe that can change when they have reached a goal. I think I always get asked the question, like every single week, do you eat fish? And I do. I eat paleo, so I eat no grains at all, not even rice or quinoa or teff, or I don't eat any grains at all. I don't eat beans and lentils. And so, so you need protein. So basically when you take away vegetable-based proteins, you're left with animal protein. So what do you then eat? So fish. So this is a dilemma, obviously. So you have certain, like, the four-legged animals that can produce quite a lot of CO2 emission. But and then if you go down, fish produces a lot of meat, kind of compared to what they eat. You can feed them mainly plant-based foods, and they still produce meat that we can eat, which is we need protein. So yes, I do eat fish. I think it's not a good industry. It's not a perfect industry, but it's something that is like also evolving, and it's going quite quickly. What we can feed the fish that we actually raise. In Sweden, we use also, or not Sweden, but in Norway and other places of the world, they use more kind of plant-based feed for the fish. And I think if you then go and eat organic farm-raised fish, then it's a better option as well. So it's one of these things. It's like pest eller cholera. It's like, what do you choose? And I think it's another challenge for nutrition and health in general. Is like preventative medicine and nutritional science needs to be part of a bigger part in Sweden, in the healthcare system in Sweden, because right now I think, like my daughter's friend a year ago, when she was 10, she broke a foot and she had to sit 21 hours at the A&E at the Kuten, and that's obviously not good. So I think the healthcare system is very taxed as it is right now. So we have to kind of change. And I think another challenge is big pharma. It can be quite challenging when I think they have a very big say in how they're shaping the healthcare system quite a lot, and then actors like me and other people who are part of nutritional therapists and setting up companies to try and kind of solve the current healthcare system. We're trying to deal with, like, it's quite hard to kind of deal with the current system as it is, because it's not really set up to kind of have health as a first priority. I think it's set up a lot have to do with financial kind of priorities. Then what I'm proud of, so this is one of the kind of questions. I think I'm very proud of that. I'm quite true to myself and very true to my clients. So when a client comes into the office, I don't have a preconceived view how I'm going to kind of manage this client. I'm kind of not in bed with one specific company, but I always choose a product or a test or a supplement, or if you recommend something which is best for that person. So that's something that I'm quite proud of. I'm proud of the impact that I've had on people's lives, especially the very complex cases. Like I do a lot of autoimmune neurology, like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and sometimes if you have someone who's had Parkinson's for 7-8 years and they've been on medications and nothing can be done, and then it takes me 9 to 18 months and then they don't have Parkinson's. So that is something which I'm quite proud of. And then I often get to hear, so why don't we hear about this? Because it's patient confidentiality. I can't, unless that person wants to go out and kind of shout it to the world, basically, then I'm not allowed to say anything. I have a very big hunger for knowledge, and and applying it then in clinic and trying to kind of spread it elsewhere to other people. I do have a big, I think sometimes carbon footprint, because I do travel, because these fantastic researchers and doctors who are spearheading the field of certain of this autoimmunity, and especially neurological autoimmunity, they don't come to Sweden basically. You have to go to America, to California most of the time. And then I'm trying to kind of walk the talk, so I'm trying to eat well and live well, and just kind of. If you want to get involved when it comes to, I don't know if you're interested in health at all, or if it's just about the food movement, but we are trying to combine the two, because obviously what you eat impact your health, and then if you are not healthy, then you have to do, you have to choose certain foods to kind of be healthy or not. So when we have, you can sign up on a mailing list, and when we do launch, because we will have lab tests, supplements, advice, consultations, food. We're going to try and have everything like a clinic, but online basically. I always try and kind of tell my clients, it's not just about food. Like, if you're trying to build a person like a puzzle, there's so many different pieces, and for some people the puzzle piece about food is bigger, and sometimes stress is bigger, and maybe you're not sleeping well. So you always, to kind of create a healthy individual, you have to eat well, you have to do good choices, but it's not just about food. And I sometimes think that maybe some people are trying to be too fanatic about something, and then it's actually taxing their own system. And so one thing that Jackie and I talk quite a lot about is that we have to take responsibility for our own health, to kind of, for the greater good of the healthcare system. So then, eating well and choosing where do you get your food from, like how has it been traveled, like in Sweden, or from abroad, or just make good choices as much as we can, just because we don't tax the healthcare system too much. I think a lot of chronic problems we can deal with ourselves as well, and there are other ways to deal with it. Maybe I'm not, like the therapy that I do is quite involving, so it doesn't fit everyone. A lot of people, they just want to have kind of maybe a pill to kind of calm down the symptoms, but for other people, they don't want to be on medicines, and then they can be much more involved and take more responsibility. And I think that when we do try and create, like, try for ourselves to be, to feel as well as we can, it just creates ripple effects, and other people can feel that around you, and you just kind of emit better energies, I think, and to be happier. Yeah. So that's what I do, basically. Yeah.
So how would you create a strategy for someone who has, for example, depression and eczema?
Okay. So depression, I might, like, where is depression? Like, if you get an SSRI, like an antidepressant, it tries to work in one way, but I try and look at why do you get depression from the first place. So if someone has depression, when you do the medical history and you see that they've been abused, or something really, something kind of physical has happened to that person that made them depressed, then I have a harder time to kind of resolve that issue. But if it's just something that kind of crept along over the years, and they just started to feel, gloomy, and then suddenly they're just depressed, after like maybe 10 years, then it's often lifestyle changes that you can, like, you change your diet. A lot happened with the gut-brain connection. The gut microbiota has a huge impact. Infections in general, and it's not just the gut microflora, but it's the integrity of your gut mucous membranes. Do you have inflammations? Why do you have inflammation? Are you eating foods that you don't tolerate? Are you eating grains and gluten and dairies that we're not really meant to eat? We haven't evolved ever eating that. It's like, if we look at our evolution from like in a 1 hour clock, like the 10,000 last years that we've introduced grains, it's like the last second basically, from like an evolutionary point of view. So you look at food, microflora, inflammations, like all of that inflammation is created in the gut and from stress. That gets out, they call inflammatory cytokines, they get up, they cross the blood-brain barrier, they bind with certain receptors in the brain, and that can cause inflammation. Depression, you have other kind of biochemical imbalances can lead to hormone imbalances and thyroid problems, maybe an underactive thyroid, maybe you have like a Hashimoto's or like an autoimmune disease, and that is impacting, like you have thyroid receptors on every cell of the body from top to toe. So if you have a thyroid problem, an underactive thyroid, of course you're going to feel it everywhere. So you optimize people's hormones. What did you say?
Eczema.
An eczema. Eczema is an autoimmune disease, very common. People don't know that often. So again, something foreign has come into your body. The immune system attacks it, reacts by trying to kill it, get rid of it. In the meantime, there is a mix-up, and the immune system start to attack yourself. So in eczema, it's going to be the skin, right? And Hashimoto's is the thyroid, or in MS, it's the myelin sheath. So it depends. So autoimmune disease, it doesn't really matter which autoimmune disease it is. To point, like to 80% it doesn't, because it's always the root causes that you have to kind of manage. What is in the food that you can't tolerate? There's always going to be something in food. There's always going to be microbes, gut microbes, maybe infections elsewhere, and very often toxicants, like maybe you have fillings, or a lot of people are too young to have like micro fillings, but if you're my age, but you do.
How old are you?
45 in 3 weeks. But younger people, they have like, no, I don't know what that is.
We have plastic.
Yeah, yes. But then plastic is better than mercury when it comes to, if you just check how close your teeth are to your brain. It's quite a complex way of kind of dealing with autoimmune disease, but yeah, you have to put people on an autoimmune paleo diet, or they will not get well. They have to sleep well. They can't be too stressed. And you kind of have to take certain supplements to be able to shift the immune system, not being autoimmune and not so inflammatory. I think you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you navigate nutritional science, because it's a notoriously tricky science to perform well, and it also can be bought by lobbying industries. So, and it's sort of evolving. So I'm just curious, like, how do you make sure that the science is pure?
I every day I read science. Like I read papers, research papers. I read books. I go to seminars, and then I read it, and then I put it into my own context of what I already know. I try things out. I kind of try to kind of think about it. Is it reasonable? Like, would I do this? Could I do this? And you try it out. Sometimes you might say to someone, okay, we're going to try this out. It's like a new thing. And then you just kind of have to test it. Science is, when they do a study, it's often, it's quite a square thing. But if you're trying to apply it then to a person and fit it into that person's reference range, or reference kind of what they are willing to do, what they want to do, it might not work, or it might work very well. So you just have to keep on top of science and read as much as you can, as much as you have time with, and then apply it. Because if you don't apply it, it doesn't really mean anything to me, at least. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? 'Cause I think that's a really interesting question. I think when I did my master's in personalized nutrition, we had a whole, I don't know if it was a whole term on the limitations of science to evidence to personalized nutrition, because it's very difficult to take the kind of science that we've been doing to test drugs and apply it to nutrition, where people have different genetics, they have different ways of eating, different culture, they sleep differently. Normally you have a drug and it has a very specific effect on the body. So I think that's one reason why actually nutritional science, there's a guy, I forgot his name, at Harvard, who's basically come out and said nutritional science is all junk. Kind of almost all, we don't really know. And I think the other thing to point out is I don't work in clinic. I haven't actually done the clinical side that Maria's done. We have a very similar education. But I think what we do is somewhat controversial because it isn't completely evidence-based, because we haven't really come around to being able to study the result on an individual because of all these factors that I just mentioned. So I think...
But that's when you put it in clinic.
We had a meeting last Saturday with a group of doctors here, very small group, but they're all medical doctors, and me and Maria. And one of the doctors was explaining how some of the things that she's done. So she had, for example, one example I've been telling people all week, so I'm just fascinated by it. She had one girl 6 years ago who had leukemia 3 times. And she was a group of children that had leukemia 3 times. And they basically said, there's nothing more we can do, so go home and die. And her mother obviously didn't want to give up, so she went to this doctor who's in Ystad, Cecilia first, maybe someone's heard of her. And Cecilia did some tests on her, which is the kind of test that we do. She's probably a little bit more in detail, because I guess she's really expensive, maybe, I don't know.
No, we do the same.
I think she does maybe more testing, I'm not sure as a doctor. Anyway, she did genetic tests, and she did some other testing that is not done here, so she sent it abroad. And she said, I noticed, certain things that were wrong here, and so I fixed them when I did these things. And she was the sole survivor out of this group of leukemia patients. That was 6 years ago, so now she's 12. And the original researchers actually went to this girl and said to the mother, we want to research you, because why did you survive when the others died? And her mother said, that's fine, she can do that, but you have to know that I went to a doctor who works with functional medicine, and we did these specific tests, and I followed her advice. And then they were no longer interested in researching her, because they said, you're not a miracle, as we thought you might be a miracle, so we can't do it. And she gave some other examples. There was another example of a girl who had epileptic fits. She couldn't walk, she couldn't eat by herself, she couldn't go to school. She had 30 fits a day, and they tried every single medication out there, and nothing worked. And she went to Cecilia, and now she has 1 to 2 fits a month. She goes to school, she walks, and she actually said, I always try and go to these doctors, and I say to them, do you want to know what I did? And they said no, because it's not evidence-based.
Yeah.
She's like, but look at the girl. She can walk, she goes to school, she doesn't have fits, she can feed herself, and they're not interested. So I think it's a really interesting question about the science. I think in Sweden there's a really big focus, much more than in other countries, on it has to be evidence-based, otherwise we can't do anything, we can't look at it, we're not interested, we don't even want to know what you do. So I think that's important to point out, because sometimes when I hear Maria talking, it's almost like, well, this is how it is. And it's not necessarily how it is, and there'll be plenty of people standing here saying, well, what you're doing is not evidence-based. It doesn't matter if someone had Parkinson's disease and now all they have is a slight tremor and you've changed their whole life. It doesn't matter, because it's not evidence-based.
Yeah, I'm like a total believer in functional medicine, but I do know there's this tension with
And to be honest, I'm a lawyer from the beginning before I studied science, or personal nutrition. So it's something that I actually struggle with a bit, because I think I do want to be evidence-based, but we have to balance that with,
That is evidence-based. Maybe we haven't found a method that's scientifically to document it, but this is evidence. Just need to be quantified.
I think the only thing that is going to solve this is actually when we can do machine learning, and that's another fascinating. That was one of the modules was all about machine learning and how in the future the only way to test this kind of method is with machine learning. Sorry.
Is it because there's too many variables in
Too many variables to
DNA,
test it
so-
like in a one variable.
Yeah,
Well, for me as a nutritional therapist, I don't really care, because I put my patients first, or a client, and I say, okay, what can I do to help you? And I'm not going to do you any harm. Like, I just want you to get better. And then, if it takes them a year or 9 months or 18 months, it doesn't really matter that much. But and if you don't get harmed, during the way, and then does it really matter? And
But it matters because it's not acceptable to the current system. So it means that it's harder for us to do all the things we want to do and make a difference, because it's not evidence-based. So
no, but then but people don't really care about that. I think when you have clients, they don't really care about that, like people.
But it affects your impact, because we
I don't really care about that.
So I'm curious, like, can you give an example of what you eat during a day, like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Like,
All right,
what's your favorite?
So what did I have for breakfast today? I had hot smoked salmon and an orange and a carrot. That's what I had. On Monday, I had chicken skewers with vegetables because we did that on Sunday for dinner. So I had that leftovers from Monday for breakfast. So I often have a pick and mix of stuff. So it's not a typical breakfast, like a Western breakfast. You know, if you go to China, you can have like chicken stew, fish stew, whatever. But so it's a pick from different vegetables and fruits and proteins. Yeah.
The food plate.
Yeah, the food plate
What does
basically.
the food plate look like? It's half a plate of vegetables.
Yeah, 50-60% vegetables, about 25% protein, and then fats, good fats. That's kind of what I try. And then lunches and dinners are kind of the same. Yeah, I often make a lot more dinners, like more food, and then I have it for leftover for lunches as well, or sometimes breakfast, and then you make a new dinner. So.
And how does the like proportion look like? Do you eat most on breakfast, or do you eat like most at dinner or lunch, or?
And do you fast?
No, I hate fasting actually. Personally, I don't like fasting. I try not to overeat ever, overeat. If you eat quite calmly, most people won't really have noticed this, but if you sit down and eat and you have like a kind of just relaxed eating where you're actually chewing the food and you're breathing and you're not stressed. Sometimes during your meal you will have it's like a sigh. Most people miss that because they eat too fast. But if you have that sigh, you you're full. You don't really need to eat anymore. But something you can all try at home. Yeah. What else? Did you say?
Yeah, so it's like proportion. Do you eat eat
Yeah.
a lot during all these?
Well, I often go to the gym after breakfast. So I don't actually eat that much breakfast because then I feel like I'm gonna puke when I'm at the gym. So yeah, I eat breakfast obviously. I have to eat within 45 minutes or an hour kind of from waking up. And then I go to the gym, and then I often have a snack and then a later lunch and then dinner. So it's 3. And if I don't go to the gym, I have a bigger breakfast, and then breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then I don't eat snacks at all.
Are you thinking about meal planning? Because I think it depends on your goals. So for example, someone who wants to build muscle, maybe they want to maximize their protein during certain, they want to eat protein more often, for example, if that's your focus. So just an example. I think it depends on what you focus on.
Yeah, but usually I think I eat a lot of breakfast. Then I go to gym, and then I have a big lunch, and then I try to take a super small dinner, so I don't eat before sleeping and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I mean I normally eat 2 hours before going to bed or something. But if I have too little dinner, then I get hungry and then I can't sleep. So I have to have. Because I don't snack really, so I have more 3 proper meals, and then I don't really get hungry for quite a long time after I eat. But if I have a very little dinner, then I would get hungry before I go to bed.
So you avoid snacks, or is it just that you don't feel you need it? Or?
No, I don't need it, because if you balance your blood sugar, you don't really get any dips, or you don't get any tops either. You shouldn't really be affected by the food you eat. You shouldn't really get high energy or super low energy. But
it's because we eat high protein, a lot of protein, and the protein also with the
well,
fat
enough protein, enough fats, and no grains, because they contain quite a lot of sugars, and if you eat foods that are inflammatory for your body, then that affects your blood sugar and your hormones as well, and then vegetables. So then you get a lot of fiber from vegetables. So it's
Can you tell us more about good and bad fats? We had a point brought up in the group recently when we were talking about Eat Lancet, and the person said that rapeseed oil is really bad for you because it's unnatural.
So it also depends on kind of, is it in a dark bottle or in a light glass bottle? Because if it's just in like a see-through glass bottle, the oil is already rancid more or less. It kind of depends on because I deal with people who are not well. So if someone has a lot of inflammation, you can kind of push in quite a lot of omega-3s for a while, and that's anti-inflammatory, but your red blood cells have more omega-6s than omega-3s, so you don't want to do that for too long. So then you have to have quite a lot of omega-6s after a while, but the right ones. And most people get too much of the wrong omega-6s because there's all of this fried foods and fredagsmys or lördagsgodis or fika, or they get just the wrong fats from those kind of foods, basically. Yeah.
But the question, rapeseed oil in general, what was their, I think, do you know what they said was wrong? It was too high in omega-6.
I don't remember. The way that it was
That's
processed was
bad
supposed to be really bad.
I think it's the processing.
So is it actually bad for
Has
you?
a big question.
Okay.
I think lots of this before.
We have to fight about it.
It's better
Need more
to
protein.
use
Very basic question. Why is it lentils, beans? Why are these to be avoided? And which
They
cases?
don't have to be avoided by everyone, but
Yeah.
for some people, when they have autoimmune disease or chronic problems, then I often take them away for people. They contain lectins, and lectin is a kind of chemical that plants produce to kind of protect their little babies. So we all know that we can't eat raw beans, for instance. You know, we will get sick. So you have to soak them for a long time, and then you have to cook them for hours, and that's because the lectin content has to also go down. So we are obviously not bugs.
You can die if you eat red kidney beans.
Yeah, if you eat too many, you can. Yeah, you have to go. You get into acute and very quickly. So some people, for some people, if they eat beans, too much beans and lentils for over a long time, it accumulates, and then it causes chronic problems. So some people, and that's something that when you're in clinic, you don't know what it's going to be. But if someone has multiple autoimmune diseases, then I clean up the diet quite a lot for maybe 2-3 months. And then you can, when you see that the autoimmune process has kind of started to stop, then you can start introducing things again. But there's obviously like a shit list in the lectins. So gluten has to go forever, and dairy. It doesn't contain lectins, but anyway, gluten is a lectin as well. And then you kind of have to see if can that person then introduce certain of the other kind of gluten-free grains. Can they have some amount of beans and lentils? Can they eat cashews or some of the seeds? So you kind of have to see, how it's for that person. But if you feel well, if you eat beans and lentils, you feel well, you don't have any aches and pains and so on, that's fine. Then you can tolerate them. Some people, if they have a lot of aches and pains and a lot of inflammation, then you tell them to take it away and then introduce it again. And if the ache starts coming back, then you kind of know that, okay, it's not for you. So this is what I mean. We can't just be too fixed on something. You kind of have to try it out, and then you see what result you get, basically. That answer? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question regarding sustainability and feeding human population.
Mm-hmm.
We're somewhere between 7 and 8 billion now. It seems like we're gonna be 10 to 11. And before agriculture and grains, we were in the millions of people. And I think in terms of calories, we get 60% from wheat, rice, and corn. And on a paleo diet, how many people could we feed? In terms of how many people on the planet?
I actually don't know. I don't know, but and this is the dilemma, I guess. I think maybe Andrea maybe you can answer that question more.
we do have to ask ourselves how much land we take to grow monocultures of grain and rice, and if we put those in using regenerative practices, so growing a variety of different vegetables and integrating animals into that process, then we could supply, I think, a paleo diet. But I'm not sure that people have really looked at all the numbers, or if the science really helps. It's the same sort of issue when it comes to like ecological thinking about how you grow food. It doesn't fit within like the same scientific method process as when you are creating a GMO seed or something, because there's so many interplaying factors.
I think we also have to think about why are people sick? Because if people are not sick, if they have a healthy microbiome, then they can probably, because I thought it was interesting what Pears talked about, that Walter Longo says we should all eat, and that was why you asked him like what carbohydrates is he recommending. Because actually the microbiome needs carbohydrates, it needs resistant starch and fiber and a lot of these the things that people then have to avoid when they're sick. Which sounds ridiculous because we tell them to eat more of it, but then it actually makes them get worse. So I just read today a really interesting initiative. Bill Gates has come out this week. He's putting a lot of millions into trying to develop some kind of probiotic microbiome powder that is much stronger than anything that's on the market today, because he says that precisely this problem that in developing countries people's microbiome is terrible for one reason. In the West, I don't remember exactly why it's so bad there, but maybe because they haven't had enough to eat. Whereas in the Western countries it's terrible because we're all eating so much processed food. So I think for most people, if you can stop them getting sick in the first place, they could probably, and have a good healthy microbiome. Then the question is, how do you have a good healthy microbiome? Because the soil is quite depleted. And I think it's quite well recognized that we will never have the microbiome that our ancestors had. I mean, unless we really develop something new, which is what Bill Gates is trying to do.
Yeah, and another factor is all the land that's been desertified because of our agricultural practices or land management practices. So if we can regenerate the soil, then we have so much more land to work with.
And also, there's a Norwegian woman. Didn't one of your clients get referred to her? Was it Crohn's disease? Who's going to get the gut fecal transplantation? So there's a woman in Norway where I think some hospital in Sweden has managed to harvest her gut bacteria and is now trialing it on inflammatory bowel disease patients. But I mean, this is the big question, like how are we going to fix our guts? Because I think one reason why we're having to go on these restrictive diets and no longer, I think your question is really interesting because most people think that beans and lentils are really healthy, for example. You should be eating more of them. But I'm one of those people that if I eat more beans and lentils, I get joint pains and feel really bad. I've tried reintroducing it so many times. So I think it's like we have so many issues that this should be ideal. In an ideal world, we should all be able to eat all of these things and it would be better for our microbiota, but when we're already sick,
But yeah, and
how
then
do we
there's
get back to a place of health?
the soil microbiome and the gut microbiome. There's a direct link. So if you have a healthy soil, and that's whatever the food that you're eating, if it's coming from healthy soil, then that can really help with your gut. There's also a link from your gut to your brain. So
And you balance, we're eating, there are over 30,000 edible foods, and we are focusing on just a few and trying to find one solution. Balance is very obvious.
But I think, so what do you think about kombucha?
I think it depends on the quality of kombucha. Yeah, I mean, if it's a good kombucha, then I think it's part of something. It's not going to be the all solution to chronic disease. I don't think so. But I mean, we have to do so many different things. So it fits part. I have it on my kind of the sheet, like a handout that I give about like in kostcirkel, and it's part of it as a healthy diet. Yeah, but I think for someone, if they think that they're gonna get well when they drink kombucha and they're gonna still, their blood sugar goes like this and they eat gluten or too many lectins or dairy, then I don't believe in that.
There are studies that show like where you grew up at or where you were born impacts on what kind of food in life you feel more comfortable eating, and it even impacts like the way your body evolved. For example, having a bigger chain to bite more, things like that. Is there any connection? For example, like South American, we eat a lot of beans, and probably we are more comfortable in eating beans and more resistant on like in terms of developing an autoimmune disease related to it. And I wonder if there is any kind of connection with that, where you are from, or where is your ancestrals based on what you're more keen to develop or more resistant to it.
Yeah, I actually don't know that. I've kind of looked at a lot of what people eat and when they move around, but I haven't looked at it from a kind of a beans and lentils point of view, actually.
Yeah, it's your gut bacteria.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically, and actually, if you come from a country, I know there's studies that show that Indian people who are brought up on a very healthy diet, such as the one you described, a lot of beans and maybe vegetarian, they actually get more sick if they then move to a country and start eating a lot of processed foods than the average person. It's like being really healthy for generations actually predisposes you to get even more ill if you start eating, just go abroad and suddenly start eating Western food. And I think it comes down to, there's probably lots of studies that still need to be done, but in general I think it's your gut bacteria.
So from the perspective of understanding how to treat.
And you know that your gut bacteria that your grandparents had, or even your great-grandparents, has been shown to affect. For example, if your grandmother was obese, several generations ahead.
No, my question was based on that, like looking from the perspective of trying to treat the disease or problem that is related to your to what you eat. Is there this concern of taking into consideration what you are used to eat and what is kind of good based on where you come from?
Yeah, no, I did take that into consideration, and I might take things out stepwise and then see where you get, and then you might have to take out a bit more along the way over the months to come, and so it's not, there is no set things in how I do it always. Yep.
My question is more globally based on like the years of experience that you have, and as you say, like you've been reading a lot and you've been informing yourself and things are evolving a lot. What is one of the major things that you had to unlearn from when you started working until now? What is, I don't know, one or two learning that you thought that were really true, and then by researching and by working you realized that you had to relearn basically some of these?
I don't think there has been so much that I had to relearn. It's more that you didn't learn it. And then
you believe that were true, and then what I meant is like you believe that were true, and then you research showed that maybe it was different or otherwise.
No, I can't really think of anything. It's more that the university degree that I did, it didn't really cover everything, and then obviously then I've been to more than 100 kind of courses after, and then you add on, and then you learn more, but it doesn't really, because it wasn't really covered from the beginning, so it didn't really take away anything. Yeah, no, I can't think of any. Maybe there is.
My idea comes from the fact that, I don't know, like 20 years back, people were still thinking that dairy products were good and would help you to grow healthy bones and free.
Yeah, but we weren't taught that dairy products was good, actually. So that's what I mean. I wasn't taught that, and then I had to unlearn it. So that's why I can't think of anything. But obviously, with health in general, has like certain cycles. Like we thought that eating certain things will lead to like raised cholesterol, or dairy was leading to strong bones. Of course, I have myths that in society in general, but not in my education. I don't think so.
Those are myths.
Sorry? What?
Those are myths.
What? Those two? What?
Calcium doesn't.
Calcium and milk?
doesn't prevent fractures. It might make your bones stronger if you.
Well, not really, not that much. You need a very little bit of calcium. But the best way to look at calcium is from how breast milk, human breast milk, what is that composed of? And it has quite a little bit of calcium, kind of the equivalent of a nectarine. So we don't really need that much. We need all the other nutrients also as well to form like the big matrix of bones. So in general, like when you eat dairy products, your pH can slightly get lower, acidic, and then you can't have, like, your pH needs to be in very controlled in the blood. So the biggest buffer are your bones. So your body draws out calcium from your bones to kind of affect the pH, and then you pee it out. So you pee out more calcium than you actually take in. So it's not just a matter of just adding in calcium. So it's just a matter of having a balance of all the minerals, but if you go like functional medicine, like if you go a step back, like if someone comes in with osteopenia, osteoporosis, or they have a lot of fractures, even as a kid, then you have to start thinking like, okay, it takes a long time to break down bones. Why do they have weak bones? Why do they have a lot of fractures? They're obviously having bad villi. They can't really absorb it. Why do they have bad villi? What are they eating to absorb it? Like, what are they eating to kind of damage their villi, the hair in the gut? What affects the villi, basically, in the gut? And maybe they have celiac disease, or so you just have to think.
Yeah, what you're saying, you need to have calcium, zinc, magnesium in certain proportion for the calcium to be effective. For instance, it's the cocktail of all nutrients.
If you say it like this, they have shown that if you take strong calcium supplements, your bones, at least temporarily, your bones, the calcium gets into your bones, but it does not prevent them from breaking. They've never shown in any study that I've seen that taking calcium supplements prevents fractures. And in fact, if you take them without vitamin D, it actually makes you more likely to have fractures.
Interested to know to what extent now do we know that people in the Paleolithic were healthy people and they were disease-free, or I think
They probably weren't disease-free. I mean, they probably died quite early and with infections and having the most horrendous life quality,
Right.
Couldn't really.
In relation to their diet, how much do we know? What sort of research and evidence do we know that based on what they eat, they were doing the right thing, making the right choices, or were eating foods that they were themselves meant to be eating?
Yeah, I mean, of course we can't go back and interview anyone, but if you look at finds of bodies that you find, you start seeing autoimmune disease about the era when you start introducing grains. Before that, you haven't really seen autoimmunity in bodies, basically, before that.
But I think also there's some misconceptions about paleo that actually, really what it comes down to is eating an unprocessed.
Oh no, I totally agree with that. I just was curious about what its scientific basis there was to whether they were healthier people or whether they had, at least this is kind of what I was getting at, less autoimmune diseases and so on. So.
Yeah, and you can see if you look like over maybe 100 years when we started kind of looking at people, indigenous people in various kind of continents, they've seen that when you eat more grains, the jaws shrink. There's not enough room for the teeth. You get teeth problems. So you actually do get structural changes even over like 100 years. There's a really good book. I can't remember what it's called now. I have it at home. I read it like 15 years ago about a scientist. It was probably written in the 1930s or something, but he had done a lot of research about this and just taking pictures of people when they kind of started eating, certain people in tribes started eating more grains, and then over many years the faces changes and the body kind of starts breaking down.
The Western price. Is that
No.
Wait, so how do I eat to make myself more attractive?
Eat ethically. Balance.
All right, I think we should have one more question because we can go on all night.
Would you tell to any of your clients that they should be a vegetarian?
That they what?
That they should be a vegetarian. Like I know you say paleo is probably the healthiest choice, but would there be any client that would have a history, a healthy history, or that he should or she should be vegetarians and not be?
There's so many different versions of vegetarian, and especially in Stockholm. So it depends on it depends on what.
Not doing the paleo.
But eating what then? Is it vegetarian or vegan?
No, not vegan, vegetarian, like exclude meat.
Exclude like four-legged
Yeah.
animals.
And
Yeah,
fish.
many do.
Would
See,
you
this is what I mean. There are
do you
lots of different.
recommend it? Do
that-
you recommend?
Not really, but I mean, people come to me who do not want to eat fish, or they just want to eat bird, or they just want to eat game, or they want to do combination of certain things, and they don't want to eat cows, pigs, and I'm fine as long as people eat. I'm not fundamental like that. Like as long as a person feels good and healthy, and we can manage their symptoms with the diet that they want to have. Maybe they need to tweak it. Usually when you can go to a nutritional therapist, you kind of expect to have your diet changed. Often people don't want to eat red meat or.
But do you recommend this, what she's asking, for any particular health condition?
Well, sometimes I recommend if they have like an inflammatory bowel disease or so on, I recommend that they don't eat that much red meat. And I do that to everyone. Just limit that to like a couple of times a week, and mainly eat and the meat that they do eat more like game, like wild caught, like deer and wild boar and so on, and more.
Why is that?
Well, they've had a better life, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's
not a nutritional reason.
Yeah, it's leaner. They've had a better life. There's no transport to the slaughtery. No antibiotics. So you can make a better choice that way.
So it's not the nutritional aspects.
No, so I talk a lot about this. Also, like about
That's
25.
definitely not sustainable. Like we're gonna kill them off before like.
No, and this is the reason why also fish, obviously. If we're all going to keep on eating wild caught fish, there's hardly any wild fish in the sea. So that most people have to eat farm fish. And what do we feed them? We can't kind of keep on kind of fishing forage fish and feed the larger fish. That doesn't really make sense either. So that's what I mean. It's a dilemma. It's not a perfect industry. We all have to eat. I recommend insects flour to a lot of people. If they can go on eating insects, because it has the lowest amount of CO2 and very high in protein. So yeah, I kind of do what kind of try to fit your view basically. Yeah, but most in general, I do also recommend red meat, and I think especially if you're a menstruating woman, I think you should have it. Okay.
Before Andrea cuts me off, have you ever been able to fix someone who has an allergy, like a food allergy, with nutritional changes?
Well, it depends if it's a proper allergy or like an IgE reaction, or if it's a sensitivity.
Shellfish allergy, for example.
Often if you have an IgE reaction, an antibody, then you can't really get rid of it. If you clean up the diet and you heal the gut lining and the mucous membranes in your body, and you calm down the immune system, then you can often tolerate that food better, and you might not have these like shocks. Some people have these like shocks, but if it's a proper allergy, then you more or less have it for life.
Doctors have done that in children with probiotics. It's still not used, as far as I understand. It's still research studies. So there were 2 studies where they cured children of their peanut allergies to the extent that they could eat peanuts without having any. And it was with a probiotic called Lactobacillus rhamnosus. But again, it's on children. Maybe that's different to adults because maybe their immune systems are different, and it's not something that any doctor would, as I understand it, in Sweden would recommend today because it's not accepted yet.
I heard that every 7 years, all your cells like regenerate so you can get rid of allergies you had before. Is that total myth?
That's not evidence-based.
Well, your bones regenerate maybe I think every 7 or 10 or whatever years, I can't remember now, but your gut regenerates like every 3 days, or so it's like it depends on me. You always have, the body is fantastic at healing as long as you take away the anti-nutrients and you introduce, give back the correct nutrients and the environment. Just change the environment in which your cells or DNA is bathing in.
Okay, wow, super interesting. Thank you.